We know she's Vidalkin. I guess I didn't get it. Weird. I thought I traded for one. This is another card we talked about, the Mizium Meddler. I still prefer the Bender. The Bender, if you have multiple things that are in the same set and you... The thing about Magic Online is if your morph creatures are not in the same time frame of Magic, they'll have different morph tokens, whereas if we're using ones from the same set, they'll have the same morph token. How do they even play the World Breaker with Blood Moon? The problem is the red-green Eldrazi, they run more basics, they run Forest, they also run this, they run Talisman. So they run more ways to break out of Blood Moon than any other Eldrazi we've come up against. They run Talisman of... It's one of the ones I don't own. Talisman of... It's the red-green one. They run Talisman of Progress? No. No, not this one either. This one. They run Talisman of Impulse. Or other equivalents. Yurison, might as well try the Vesuvian Shapeshifter. We don't have enough mana for it, though. The Vesuvian? The Shapeshifter was talked about. The problem with Shapeshift is that it's just a little too much mana. And we would probably go with this art, but let me remember the wording specifically. Okay, so you want me to spend... Yeah, I mean, like, that's the problem with Willbend. I would rather run the Husher, for real. We were main decking the Spellskite, yes. That's what we were doing. The problem with Spellskite is it only protects Bridge, it won't protect Moon, because it has to be a legal target, right? For Worldbreaker, or is that not correct? Because Worldbreaker reads... We did get a Husher. Hang on, let's just... Hang on, just so we can talk about it. I did get the Void Mage. Okay. Alright, so let's talk about that interaction and see if we can't find a workaround. It's the only variant of Eldrazi that has a favorable matchup against us because they run so many ways to get around Blood Moon, more than the average Eldrazi deck does, from our testing. So let's talk about it. Worldbreaker. Do we seriously want to run something like this? I mean, obviously it has to work against things other than Worldbreaker, but do we seriously want to run... Like, Abrupt Decay. Abrupt Decay breaks out of Moon and Bridge. Abrupt Decay, only Willbender's going to handle. Void Mage will not, of course. But Void Mage has other applications. You can reuse her. She also has built-in flash. You don't have to use the vial. Whereas Willbender has to get on the table. We have to morph it. Or we can, yeah, we can main deck a Spellskite or two, you know? That's maybe even a better option, but we'll Spellskite... Let's think about that interaction. Let's say we have a Blood Moon against the Eldrazi, right? Against red-green Eldrazi. They draw their outs, they draw their basic forest, or they draw their talismans. They cast a Worldbreaker trying to remove the Blood Moon, right? What happens? Is it because it's an or? It's exile target artifact enchantment, or we should still be able to use Spellskite, right? Because that's one of the legal types, or because it's chosen mode enchantment, it won't work. Talk to me, stream. These are all reasonable options. We could main deck the Spellskite again. We were for a while. Maybe we could cut the Fantastic for the main deck Spellskite. It's not modal, therefore it's still legal. Okay. So do we want to go back to a main deck Spellskite instead? I'm down. Okay. Okay. We could do that. We'll have to find a new sideboard card, though. And Spellskite will work against Abrupt Decay as well. Spellskite will just be the most flexible. So we need a new sideboard card. We've main decked the Spellskite before. I don't hate the main deck Spellskite. Means we have a new sideboard slot opening. So Recall, Vandal Blast, Needle Relic, Chalice Explosives. That's the Mage package. Staticaster, Profaner, more creatures, more wizards that are tutorable to utilize against creatures. A second Spellskite, Akira, Vendilion Clique, Blood Moon, Tidebinder Mage. These are kind of in the same pile, though. No, these kind of do a similar effect. So more tutorable wizards for various applications. And another moon. What do we need more of? Satoplast Manipulator. I mean, part of me wanted to try the Thaumaturgist, but I think the Staticaster just does its job better, or Profaner will do his job better. But maybe not. Chronologist? Probably not, but that's a cool idea. Seriously, what about Husher? What do we... I think this is the most playable, no offense to Willbender. What are we countering with this? What are we countering with this? Besides, I mean, obviously fetches are all over, but that's way too slow for countering fetches. What are we doing with this? Countering a Karn, Ugin, Planeswalker ability? Wasn't the Profaner terrible when we tested it? No, Duke, it was just specific. We thought we could bounce bigger boards. It's specific to bouncing boards of creatures with toughness 3 or less in the deck. That doesn't mean it's bad. It's just more specific than we wanted it to be. Therefore, therefore it frustrated me at first. But it does have board states it's useful for. Best case will hit Walker or a Vial. What's Ampersand? What's up? Welcome to the show. What do I think about one of Clever Impersonator? I can't tutor for it. So you want me to copy the Blood Moon or the Bridge in response to removal for Bridge or Blood Moon? Duke Paulus is right. One of our worst matchups is Fish. Daring Apprentice. This is interesting to me, though. Not that I think we're going to use it. That's just interesting. You want me to run Daring Apprentice? It just seems like a worse Void Mage. We already have the Void Mage engine. Who's the guy that gives blue creatures +1? You're talking about, he's not a wizard though. Well, we're running Kira without tutors. So what is this, a backup bridge? If somebody tries to remove bridge, we just copy the bridge. Or if somebody tries to remove moon, we just copy the moon. Or we can borrow people's planeswalkers. Run 2 sowers. Just run the second sower when we know we're against creature decks. It is one of the most powerful effects in our deck. Resolving sower and then protecting said sower is one of the ways we steal a lot of our games against the big creature decks of the format. Like Profaner, hang on a second. That's not a bad idea, just adding the second sower. Let's talk about it. What does that look like? Because Profaner's good against the small creature decks of the format, but the big creature decks of the format we want a sower. Tamio. Walker, Vial, Oblivion Stone. We do have trouble with Oblivion Stone. Okay, let's talk about a second sower in the sideboard. The big creature strats of the format we just rock with sower. A second sower isn't bad. Overmaster, talk to me. What about buying a second sower of Temptation? It is one of the strongest lock pieces, or strongest pieces when it comes to, it's kind of expensive, but this is good for small creature strategies, this is good for big creature strategies. We did try Jace. Aven Augur will hit bigger creatures than Profaner can. How do you spell it? Aven what? Aven what? There's so many Avens, man. Which one? Is it a wizard? What Aven are you talking about? Sower's our best card in all honesty. I typed in Aven Augur. Okay, cool. Sacrifice Aven, return up to 2 target creatures. Okay. This is for like bouncing tokens though, like a whole board. We want to bounce a whole board. This is interesting though. Mind Sensor says Droop, it's white. If we were white wizards, sure. We're blue-red wizards. Seems pretty terrible. I think the Profaner has a more high impact. So we should grab a second Sower? Okay. We've been talking about adding the second Sower for creature matchups for a long time now. Right, Overmaster? So we'll main deck 1 Spellskite, and we'll get in a sideboard Sower. Augur's only in the upkeep. It is only in the upkeep. It's a little too specific. Alright, let's go ahead and buy a second Sower. We've been talking about it for a while, so I'm okay with it. We want the deck to be more competitive. If it's expensive, it's worth it. I mean, if it's necessary for the deck. Sorry. Yes, it's expensive, but if it's necessary for us to just beat the bigger creature strategies more often post-board, we should do it. It's also naturally resilient to Abrupt Decay, which is a problem when you're trying to counter everything. Sower of Temptation. How's it going, Dirigible? Emperor says, would any of the Magus cycle be good other than Moon? Not really. We looked at Magus. We looked at the blue Maguses too. The problem with the blue Maguses is they were too low impact. The only exception was maybe the one where you get to play the top card of your deck. This one. We talked about Magus of the Future. We don't want to go to 5 though. We want the deck curve to stop at 4. That's why Magus of the Moon is fine. You could have an extra Magus of the Moon too. We talked about Magus of the Bazaar as an enabler for things like my pet card, which was Grim Lavamancer. Oh, I guess Grim Lavamancer is not a pet card, because it's actually also just a powerful card. We talked about, not Magus of the Arena, we talked about Magus of the Scroll even. Problem with Magus of the Scroll is our hands are not always empty. There's Magus of the Jar we talked about. We talked about a lot of the other Maguses. But the only one that was impactful enough was Moon. But we did talk about the other Maguses. There's some white Maguses that have modern applications, but we're not white. Sage's Dowsing is pretty terrible. Unfortunately, I hate to say it that bluntly. The problem with Sage's Dowsing is it's not a hard counter, it's just a mana leak. But it's a 3-mana mana leak. And sure, it draws you a card if you have a wizard, but I don't think I'd pay 3 mana for a mana leak that might draw you a card. Or, yeah. I wouldn't pay 3 mana for a mana leak, period, actually, even if it did draw me a card. Econometrica! Thanks for the follow, Reno. Alright, let's grab another Sower. It is that good in creature matchups. Like, resolving Sower and protecting Sower can easily win a lot of the matchups that we're having a little trouble with recently. Honestly, we could maybe trim on Vapor Snags to get the image back in. What about cutting 1 Vapor Snag for a fan? Because here, what are the things we're cutting most when we sideboard in all matches? Hang on a second. That's the other question we have to answer before we jump in. Last question. Before I buy the Sower and we're good to go. I'd love to get this back in the deck as a one-of. What are the things we're cutting most in every matchup? It seems to be Vapor Snag.